Okay, we're going to get started here. I'm going to take your wood, get it all cleaned up, get the dust, dirt, bark, loose pieces, everything is cleaned off. Wire brush works good, pick, screwdriver, compressed air, but you want to get that cleaned up so that you don't have any floaties showing up in your resin. That looks tacky, but you want to go from there. You're going to get your piece in the mold, get your mold set up, make sure that you get it battened down, glued down some way so that you don't float, because the wood in that resin definitely will float. Very few things won't. So we're going to mix up some designer epoxy, the deep cast. I'm going to start with about 32 ounces. Get my titanium silver color in there as I'm mixing it up. Now, a mechanical mixer will inject air into that resin, so the next process is going to be a vacuum chamber to help get that air out of there, plus get it deep into the wood and stabilized so that you get an air-free, bubble-free piece out of it, because air bubbles in a project they magnify, they look ugly. So you want to make sure that you get that done. So once we get that first 32 ounces put into the mold, I'm going to mix up another batch, get my color in there, and then I'm going to set it in the vacuum chamber and top off. I'm going to give myself room at the top of it, because as the air starts to come out in the vacuum, it foams and spills over, makes a nasty mess in your vacuum chamber. But as we finish up getting that second batch mixed up, ready to go, once I get that ready, I'll go ahead and top off up to about an inch of the top of my project with the resin, and then kind of hold back a little bit of reserve so they can get a reservoir on the project when it goes into the pressure pot, because as the vacuum draws the air out of the wood and make sure that vacuum gets replaced by the resin down in the cracks and crevices and soft spots in the wood. You're going to see me open and close the valves as that bubbling comes to the top of it so that it doesn't spill over. You're going to open it up, break that vacuum, let it calm down, close them back up so that you can get that vacuum down there. You're kind of looking for a 27, 28 inch vacuum. That is about as close as you're going to get it with any man-made mechanical vacuum. The only place you're going to get a perfect vacuum is in outer space. So get that all calmed down. Once you get it down in that 27, 28 inch vacuum area and you're not excessively bubbling out of there, you're probably going to let it sit for a good hour, hour and a half, and let it just continue to draw the air out and let that resin kind of refill where the air was in the wood. So you get stabilization, you get all your cracks and crevices and voids filled in. It's a great process. Cedar especially, I'd like to turn a lot of cedar, but lots of open spaces that you got to get that resin into. So the vacuum really gets that started. Then you're going to put it in the pressure pot. Here we're taking it out. Pressure pot's going to be a 72-hour process under about 60 pounds of pressure that hopes to push all the rest of that resin into the open voids in your project. Once you get that done, you're going to get to work on taking your project out of the mold, get the mold removed from it so that you can get it up on the lathe and get it between centers, and get on the way to getting started. So that's kind of what we're after. Here we're actually getting the centers dialed in. Going to drill a little bit of a hole so that your woodchuck can grab hold in there, and then you have a place that you can put your tailstock and center up so that you get as clean a run, as close to true as you can, roughed out. And then once you get that smoothed out, you're going to start at probably a lower RPM. I think when I started out here, I was working at about 450 RPMs until it started to true up a little bit, and then I went up to 550, 600 RPMs. Once you can get, the higher the speed you get, the better the resin likes to turn. You get a lot less in the way of chip out and so forth in it. So you get a much cleaner cut the higher speed you do. Resin really likes to be turned at 1,000, 1,200 RPMs. That's where it's the smoothest. And wood, depending upon what wood you got, you know, that's going to vary. But mixing that resin, if you can get it all trued up and spinning smoothly enough to get up around 1,000 RPMs, you're going to find that life gets much simpler. When you're first getting it down, I just hog into it. I do get a lot of chip out when I do it. But what I want to do is get that excess resin scraped off the wood, get down to the wood so that I can start to see where I want to go, and more realistically, where the wood and the resin want you to go, because the wood and the resin, they're the boss. They're going to tell you what it wants to be. You may start with one idea and find out that the wood and the resin combination kind of dictate a different shape than what you might have had in mind. This particular vase, that's what happened there. I was going to be a much more of an outward rounding, was my original intent. That's what I thought I wanted to do. But as I got into it, I started seeing different patterns that were showing up in the wood, the resin combination, and that kind of dictated a narrower throat out to a flared with kind of a bulbous bottom to it. So we kind of went with the flow. I just find it's easier that way. Sometimes when you try to force a direction, it just tends to make life a lot more miserable. So if you can do that, great. If not, you'll learn. I've been doing this for about 25 years, and really truly the last probably 5, maybe 6 years, I've gotten into the resin. But before it was all wood or segmented work, which was all fun, but resin just opens the door to so much more wood, stuff that would otherwise have been firewood, because it's spalting too badly. It's got too many opens and holes in it, and would just, once you put it up on a lathe, it would just fly apart and beat you to death. The resin just kind of bonds that all together. You can use just about any wood that's out there and get it all stabilized and get a good solid piece that you can turn, and just let your creativity go wild on you, and be able to use so much more wood than you could just turning wood. I mean, a lot of open voids, root balls, and things like that, they're so dense They'll hold together, gives you a lot of beautiful projects with openings in them and stuff like that. But if you can't find that kind of wood and you've got punky, spalting, soft woods, resin is the answer to that, in my opinion. It just opens so many more doors and allows so much more, and then you get the color aspect of it. You learn how to get certain colors of your mica powders or even your liquid coloring allow so much more so many more options, let's put it that way. And again, you can use wood that you wouldn't normally be able to use. So as you start getting this turned down and you start getting the shape formed, one thing you're going to find, especially when you're getting that outer layer, getting resin off of the wood so that you can get down to it and start developing that shape, is the strings of spider webs that come off there. They seems like your tool is always turned in a direction and it throws it all over you, and you get it all over your face shield, and sometimes you almost can't see what you're doing until you get it pulled off. But it's kind of spider webby. That's almost what it feels like. So it's kind of nice to get her down to the rough part where you start getting into wood, and then that breaks that up and you don't get all the stringy stuff all over you. But as we're developing the shape here, as you hit resin pockets, you'll see where the strands coming off of that get much longer and stringier, and then as you get back into the wood, that breaks it up and you get a lot smaller resin ribbons coming off, and it's a little more manageable. It doesn't drown you in it. So just work away with it. We're looking at cracks, we're looking at smooth. I always follow the horizon on the wood to see where I'm at shape wise, to see any ridges and valleys in it. Here in a couple minutes you'll see I do use a simply scraper. I should say simple. It's a good tool to kind of even out straighter lines or even rounding lines, just to kind of take the ridges and valleys out of the piece that the single blade Hercules will tend to leave in there. So for the most part, I'm going to use the Hunter Tool Systems Hercules. That's my main tool. I will supplement that with the scraper and some of the smaller tools, and when we start hollowing out, we get in there with some long hollowing tools that help get to the bottom of stuff. But a variety of tools. Just carbide to me is the only way to go with resin. High-speed steel, wonderful tools, use them for a lot of years, but Lord, will the resin dull them up. It almost seems like you're gonna spend the rest of your life sharpening tools. I can do it. You got to learn how to do it when you're turning wood. Do I like to? No. I can get 2 or 3 projects, depending upon the size, out of a carbide cutter, and never have to sharpen it. But resin is a very hard substance, and it is just death on high-speed steel. it'll dull it so fast. But the carbide tool is great. I find myself using that probably 99% of the time anymore. It just does such a good job. You can change the angle on that thing. There you can see I'm kind of at a 45-degree angle, giving a little bit more scraping effect, cutting down on the feed rate so that you don't get the chip out, tear out problems. It cleans up the cut, smooths it down, and will give you just pretty much a smooth surface cut, and requires very little sanding to get any tool marks out of it. Now, one thing about cedar that I find is that you'll get a lot of tool marks that sometimes are difficult to get out with sanding. So if you control that angle and get good clean scraping action on it as you near your finished shape, it cleans that right up, and then a little bit of sanding and you really get a nice beautiful finish on that as far as the tool goes, and you can sand it out and clean that up. So what we're doing here is just getting that shape finalized. Chips are flying. Sometimes the shavings will cover up the camera, and if you aren't looking at that camera all the time, suddenly you realize nobody can see anything because there's shavings all over the lens. Just almost tends to be magnetic. Like you don't think it's going at the camera, and catch yourself looking at it and the camera's all covered up. So you gotta get that mess cleaned up. But just gonna continue getting that shape toned down to where I want it to be. I'll work on basically the bottom and the middle, working up to the top flare. I kind of saved that top flare for the last bit of shaping that I'm gonna do. This particular piece I'm going to work on the flare at the top right towards the end of the hollowing process, because then I can get a little better idea of proportional, how I want to proportion the flare at the top to the rest of the piece. So everybody's got a little different technique. Everybody's got a little bit different style in the way that they work that thing. Right there, you'll see that I'm working that tool handle up against my body to help me get the control I'm after. A lot of times my finger will rub on that tool rest to give me some guidance as we go. Here we're going to work on the bottom a little bit, trying to get it flattened out and get ready for putting the glue block on it. Once I get the glue block on it, I can turn it around and we can start hollowing and then work up on that flare up there. But just want to get that down as flat as you can, and really and truly kind of convex, so that you have a ridge for the piece to sit on that won't wobble. Plus, it gives you a little better grip when you're getting a glue block on there. And when I put a glue block on, I tend to use epoxy to put those on with. Occasionally I will use hot melt glue. Just depends on the piece of wood that I'm working on, the shape of the form and so forth, how much room I've got. But I use both techniques. I do like the epoxy a little better. I just feel like it is much less likely to fail. I've had hot glue fail on me, and you start getting the piece wobbling or whatever. But you want to keep that tailstock up there for as long as humanly possible. That way it keeps everything true and spinning right. You don't get any wobbles. It's safer. Nothing worse than getting a wobble on there, and before you can get your lathe turned off, it launches, and Lord only knows where they're going once they do. But you want to stay as safe as you can, so keep that tailstock in there as much as humanly possible for as long as possible. And once you get to the point where you start hollowing, well, obviously you can't have the tailstock in your way while you're trying to hollow, so hopefully by then you've got a good true shape that's going to spin smoothly without creating any problems. So that's just what we're going to continue to work on here. Get that tool at a good scraping angle, smoothest cut possible, and you really accomplish that by the angle on that tool as well as your feed rate. So while let's just speed it up film wise. I'm not really going as fast as it looks there, but in order to get the video in, you got to speed some of this stuff up. So I just keep working on that middle to bottom, getting it refined the way I want it, bringing out the wood to my satisfaction. Like I said, I try to I like to see maybe a 60-40, 70-30 wood to resin ratio. Don't always get it because projects, like I say, dictate different. But one of the reasons you're turning is because the grain of the wood, you're just trying to get as much of that as you can exposed. So right here, I've taken those cracks, those thermal cracks, and I've covered them, or filled them, I should say, with UV resin, and put them under a UV light, let it get hard. Now I'm just going to go back and smooth them out, because I'm pretty much at the final shape that I'm going to have this at. So it's just a matter of getting that smoothed out and brought into the project as clean as possible. But when I first started, the thermal cracks used to drive me nuts. Now I've gotten to the point where I just feel like it's part of the character of your piece. In a lot of ways, it creates its own beauty to the overall look of the whole unit. You get a little contrasting color going in there in different crazy directions, and it just adds to that character. So we're doing a little bit of work up on that flare, trying to bring it down. I think it's too big, so we're going to narrow that down a little bit, and then just continue to smooth out that whole piece. Here we got a little bit of an overhead look as we're finalizing the shape, and we just want to get as smooth as we can, so I got to do as little sanding as possible. It's the ultimate goal. The less I have to sand, the better I like it. So we'll just work away here, work on those final finishing cuts, get it smoothed out the best I can, get any chip out, taken out that I've created. And then once we get to that, we can get it flipped around and start working on the hollowing. So that'll be coming up here in just a couple minutes. Again, the resin is just, it just does unbelievable things to wood you would love to turn, but you just can't because it's going to fly apart. It won't tolerate the lathe and whatnot. But I've really gotten to the point where I just absolutely enjoy the whole resin part of it. It just adds so much more character, gives beauty to the wood. It's all complementary. Probably the toughest part of it is finding the colors that will contrast well with your wood, and that they work together and create a beautiful piece. We're just going to finalize up that final shape on it. Get the hollowing here in just a minute. There we go. So I start about a 3/4 inch bit going in there. I like to give enough room so that the wood shavings that are coming off of it don't get trapped and then burn in there. Cedar doesn't like a lot of friction real quick. It'll get hot and smoke, but so you got to go slow and steady. Increase your drill bit sizes slowly. I just find that it goes a lot smoother and a lot better. I don't want to get a lot of heat involved in that because I don't know if the wood got too hot, would you get separation on your resin? Would you crack along the transition lines? Things like that. So I try to take it up slow. The bits will get hot in cedar, so occasionally you'll see me grab a bit with a pair of channel locks and set it aside and let it cool down as you're working in on it. Resin will heat a bit up quickly. So as we do a little bit of hand sanding and cleaning up the inside of that with a long straight cutter and the deep cutting hollowing tool that by Hunter Systems helps me get back to that. There's a ridge that as I come across flat on the bottom and start up the side, I just get a little bit of a ridge in there that I can feel that drives me nuts because I want it to be smooth. So turn it on, turn it off, shine the light in there, look at it, get an idea of where I've got to go. Try to figure out between the different tools what's going to give me the best cut, what's going to give me the smoothest cut. This particular one, I've got a narrow enough throat that I really can't get much of a sanding implement of any kind back in there. So my goal here is to get as absolutely smooth as I possibly can with the different cutters. So just light scraping. You're not getting in there hogging on anything. You just want to be light and smooth. Scrape it down, get as clean a cut as you possibly can because you don't have a lot of ability to get in there and sand that. So as we get that finished up, we're going to clean up the flare on the top of it, get it more to size of what I want it to be, and whatnot. A lot of hand sanding here. I like to power sand most of the time, but it depends on the shape. Sometimes it's just easier to get some sanding pads or just your fingers to get in and get that sanding cleaned up. I usually start with 60 grit and will work my way up to probably 400 grit before. On this one, I use Waterlux sealer. Uh, Cedar really reacts well to that, and all the Waterlux products I've found are just so much more accepting to the resin. You don't get streaks and puddling and that kind of stuff. They lay down really well. They self level, and it really just an excellent product. It gives me the kind of finish I'm looking for. I'm a glossy kind of guy, so I like gloss finishes. Sometimes I'll mat it down, just depends on what the project kind of dictates. Um, or a lot of times, whatever customers want. I always try to adhere that, but on my left to my own, I'm going to make it glossy. I'm either going to put a resin coat finish on it, or it's going to be the gloss Waterlux. Just love the stuff. It's easy to work. It's easy to put down. Like I say, self-leveling, doesn't leave you a lot of drips as long as you don't get it on overly heavy. Um, but key to all that is making sure you got your surface sanded smooth. Uh, get all the final tool markings out of it, and just clean it up, get it to where you want it. A lot of times, depending upon what wood I'm working with, I'll take sandy grits up as high as 800. I'll even buff it with triple E, and sometimes even go beyond that with like 6/0 steel wool, just to get it cleaned up and as smooth as I can so that my finish is good. So we're going to use the sealer here. You put it on, you allow it to soak in and start to dry, and they tell you in about 30 minutes you're going to go back over it with a clean dry cloth and wipe the excess out. If you don't get the excess off the sealer, it sets hard, and it's really tough to get any little imperfections back out of it. So you'll see me work the glove. I'm getting a feel for it. I want to work it into any little areas that need extra. Here on the inside, we're pouring it, and they're going to roll it around. Get as much coverage in there as humanly possible. Pour the excess out, go back and do it again. I usually do it 2, maybe 3 times just to get all the areas on the inside. And after about 30 minutes, you're just going to take a nice dry clean rag, wipe it out. There you're seeing me with a bar to get the inside wiped out, and pulling the rag back out of there. So you want to get it coated up, let it dry for 24 hours, and then when you put your final coat, which somehow I lost footage on putting the Waterlux coat on it, but I've got 3 coats of Waterlux gloss on it, kind of light sanding in between coats, steel wool, triple E, either one of those. Here we're going to cut off the glue block, so I get it in there so far with a parting tool, and then I'll take a handsaw and finish the cut off, because I want to control that whole process so that I don't dump it off. I've had that happen. If I get down too low and get a little whip or something like that, and it pops off and throws it against the lathe or the wall behind me there, worse yet, the floor in front of me. So that's what we got. Please like, subscribe, share, comment, please, and thank you so much for watching.